Welcome back to my channel for another video, and this time it's not about digital photography, it is about film roll photography. And what I have here in front of me is a Mamiya 7.2 camera body and a Mamiya 7N 80mm f4L lens. I'm going to unbox this quickly and then I want to provide a tutorial what this camera and lens are all about, how to use it and how you can shoot 120 film in this beautiful camera. Let's kick off the video. The Mamiya 7 and its successor, the 7.2, and the difference between the two versions is not breathtaking. They are medium format film cameras, and there are pro photographers out there who say this is the best camera in the world, period. I wouldn't fully subscribe to that statement, but I would agree to some extent because this is a very capable medium format camera, and if you want to digitize your prints or negatives later on, then you will end up with 100 to 150 megapixels, so it also provides a lot of reserves for a later in process digital workflow. What I want to do now is quickly unboxing the camera body and the lens, and want to look into the condition of the two, want to see if what's been advertised in this pre-owned camera and lens combo, that it is in excellent condition, and then I want to explain the elements of the camera, how to shoot it, and everything you basically need to know or want to know about this fantastic medium format film camera. So let's start this time with the lens, and the 80mm f4L is the standard lens for the Mamiya 7 and the 7.2, and there are other focal lengths available, but this is the one you find in most of the cases if you purchase these combos pre-owned. And you see also the box here is in pretty good condition. This looks almost like new. You don't see the age of the box at the outer appearance, and I like a lot the way this was shipped to me. So let's have a look inside. First of all, we have here some tech. So Mamiya 7 and 80mm f4L, 84,000 yen. That seems to be pretty original. Then we have here a manual, and that is something which is, as I said, rare. If you purchase pre-owned gear from Mamiya from back then you typically don't have an original instruction manual and you go for the PDF which you find in the web. It's also in English, and I think it's quite nice that this is in the box and in the package here. Then we open this further and have a look inside, and then we find here the usual lens hood. Let's see what condition we have here. Wow, I'm impressed. I've not opened this before and this looks like brand new. No signs of use, no scratches, no nothing. Looks really good. It exactly says here what the lens is all about, and I think this is very promising. Let's now have a look at the lens, and then the box is empty. Professionally wrapped into plastic here. Put this aside, let's have a look here. This seems also to be the original plastic, the way it feels. Quite nice, and here is the lens. And well, that does not only look like mint condition, it really looks like excellent condition. You see here, no signs of use, absolutely nothing. Let's have a look inside into the glass. This looks really good, really well. Let's see what we have here. No, this is just some dust. Quite nice. And let's look at the bottom. Also quite nice. Contacts very, very clean. No scratches, no signs of use. I'm pretty impressed what they shipped to me here in this box. Let's now focus on the camera body, and also here the box is in a fantastic condition here. Look at that, a little bit of, you know, signs of use here, maybe also from transportation, but this really looks as back then you would have just purchased it originally and new. And let's open this quickly. Quite nice. So here's some stuff inside. First of all, we have a paper bag here which is empty, so let's put this aside. Look at that. Here we have the original paper, and that paper is kind of brand new and not used. I don't think anyone has ever taken this out of the box. Let me try to do this carefully. Here we have the 181,000 yen price tag for the Mamiya 7.2 with that original piece of paper here. Then we have here the Mamiya Camera Club. Look at that. Quite nice. This is in Japanese, not very helpful for me. And then we have here an original manual, Mamiya 7.2. And you see here, this is Japanese. But it has value, of course, because it is original. Let's see if there is some English coming later. But no, this seems to be all in Japanese. So I can't read it, but clearly it's a valuable brochure or booklet here because it is fully original and is reflecting the glory of this camera system back then and still today, because many people shoot this today and you find a lot of tutorials about that camera on YouTube, for instance. So I put this all back into this plastic bag and let's have a look what else we find inside. Looks like here we have a shoulder strap that seems to be originally sealed. You can see here Mamiya outside, so I will not open this, but you can see it here a little bit shining through Mamiya. That's the shoulder strap. Now there is nothing more here in that box, so I can now take out the protection material and can get out the camera body. And let's see how this looks like. Okay, this is further sealed in plastic. Let's be careful here. You see by now the box is empty, so this is it. Let's get this aside a little bit here. And then we have this package here. Wow, look at that. It's as if you would have done some time travel back and purchased this freshly in Japan. What a nice package, what a nice, excellent condition, at least in the packaging. We have not seen the camera body yet. Let's get this out carefully here. Let's focus on that camera body for a moment, and just at first sight, this looks like brand new. Such lucky circumstances. I must admit, I've never seen a pre-owned Mamiya 7 II in such an excellent condition. Have a look here. Let me try to turn this around. This is like never used, brand new. Someone owned this camera and never used it. Look at the bottom here. No traces or signs of use, absolutely nothing. This looks just fantastic. I'm so excited about that. What I will do now is I will mount the lens and then I will provide a quick tutorial on how to use this fantastic medium format film camera. For mounting the lens, we first have to remove the body cap, and there is a red dot here and a white dot here, and I have to push that button and then I can open the camera body here and the lens mount. If you look carefully inside, you will see a curtain here which serves as a dark slide, as you've seen it in an analog way, for instance, on my videos on the Hasselblad 500 or the Mamiya RC67. And I'm covering that curtain later on and its function and how it all works. But now for the time being, let's mount the lens. So let's get here the lens. And then let's get this off here. And then we follow the usual procedure. We have a white dot here. We have a white marking here on the lens. And that's actually where it starts to sit on the lens mount on the camera body, and then it snaps in. Listen to the click. That's it. Now the lens is mounted, and the last thing we have to do is to mount the lens hood. And we have on the lens here a red marking, and we also have a marking on the lens hood here. So that's the way we need to align this. And if I do this, you see this fits and matches. I just rotate it until it sits firmly. And then we also have the spare out here. I think you can see this here in the lens at the right place where the light needs to pass through. So that's the way how to mount the lens. And that's really a beautiful camera. Look at that. How nice is that? I like this a lot, and I think we are going now straight away into a tutorial how to load it with film, what the different elements are here on the camera body. Let's start with the elements at the bottom of the camera. And first of all, we have here a battery compartment. You can open this by rotating it with a coin, and the batteries you use for this are these type of batteries here. It's 6-volt batteries. Make sure it's a lithium battery because that will give you about 7 hours of continuous operation. Otherwise it will be less. This button here we don't need. That's for rewinding the film and only for 135, so not for 120, so we won't use this here if we shoot this with 120 film. This mechanical element here is the release mechanism for the dark slide curtain, or you could also call this the light shield curtain. With this one here, we advance the light shield curtain, and this looks like this. Now it's advanced, and now you can release it here. Listen to the sound. That's it. And I show this in a moment how it looks when we look inside the camera body. Then we have here a standard tripod socket, and this is actually a mechanism I'm going to show in a moment, and it will help to release the spool on the left hand side, and we'll see later when we load film into the camera that the left hand side is the home of the film and the right hand side is the home for the take up spool. At the rear side of the camera we have the optical viewfinder, the rangefinder. We have a memo clip holder so you can basically remind yourself what type of film you are shooting. We also have here an indication of the film we are using, and you can change this by rotating the pressure plate inside the camera film roll compartment. I show this in a moment. And we have here a multi-exposure button, which is new on the Mamiya 7 II and was not there on the Mamiya 7. At the left-hand side of the camera body, we have the release lock or switch for the film roll magazine, and you basically push this button here, then you slide this down and then it opens. So we can actually have now a view inside the camera. And first of all here, we have now the pressure plate, and you see this is adjusted currently to 120 film. But you can also shoot 220 or 130 film, and if I rotate this, then the pressure plate becomes compatible for these two other types of film. And it also gives you here then an indication, as you see now, that this is now adjusted for 220 and 135 on the pressure plate. If we now want to go back to 120 film, we just do the same rotation here, then it snaps in to 120, and if I close this and bring it back inside here, you see this now switched here to 120. So you know exactly from looking at the back side of the camera what type of film is adjusted on the pressure plate. Since the camera is now open, I can also show the mechanism of the light shield curtain. And let me just quickly bring this in here. So if I rotate now down at the bottom, this wheel I showed before, you see the light shield curtain closing. And this is really like a dark slide in a Hasselblad 500 or in a Mamiya RC67, and then it's closed. I can snap it on, and now if I release it, you see how this is basically coming back. You see, that's the way it works. It's a very nice, very solid mechanism. By the way, I didn't speak too much about the design of the camera, but the camera body is really lightweight because it is basically plastic. So it's not the most valuable package you have here in hand, but from an image quality perspective and the possibilities you have shooting this with medium format film, it's an absolutely fantastic camera. But a lot of people who use this camera for a longer time, they complain about scratches, damages on the camera body because it's just nothing more than plastic. We also see here the spool, which becomes my take-up spool. So if I want to remove that, I just push that orange lever here. Then here, you see this at the bottom. This here comes out. And now I can take out the spool. Let's quickly get this out here. So, and if I want to insert it on the right hand side now to become my take-up spool or the receiving spool, I just push that other orange switch here. Then here you see also this mechanism coming out of the camera body, and I can now insert the spool here. Now it's in, and then I just lock it again by pushing it from down below inside. Now the spool is solidly captured here. And if I want now insert the film, which we do at the end of the video when I'm done with my demonstration, we do the same thing here. We just insert the film roll, push this up inside the camera body, and then we can advance the film until it is firm. And we have some alignment here between an arrow I'm going to show in a moment, and then this little arrow here at the top. And then we can close it. And that's basically all we have to see inside of the Mamiya 7 II camera body. I already mentioned that the multi-exposure switch here is one of the major differences between the 7 and the 7 Mark II. And there is another difference here, which you see on the left-hand side, and that's you can also mount your shoulder strap for vertical shooting. And that was not there for the Mamiya 7, but now is included for the Mamiya 7 Mark II. Looking at the front side of the camera, we have here the on-off switch. Red means off, white means on. We have here the advance lever for advancing the film. I come to the control wheel here for exposure, ISO and exposure compensation in a moment. We have here a self-timer, and that means if I push that button and the lens is cocked and everything is ready to shoot, then we have about 10 seconds to get in position, and then the shot will be taken automatically, which is quite convenient also on a tripod to avoid any shakes and vibrations by just releasing the shutter. But remember, this is a leaf shutter, and the leaf shutter sits in the lens, and leaf shutters are in general not as vulnerable for shakes and vibrations as if you have a focal plane shutter in the camera body. And then we have here the rangefinder, of course, and a few elements which are used for metering light, used to illuminate the frames. We look into that in a moment in the rangefinder, in the optical viewfinder. And you have this beautiful Mamiya design element here, which also was not there on the Mamiya 7 and was a bit more simple, but here now is really fancy on the Mamiya 7 Mark II. And then we have here on top of the camera, I mentioned it before, the advance lever for advancing the film and for cocking the lens. And then we have here a control wheel. And if I lift this up, I can control my ISO setting here. So this is now a 100 film. This is a 200 film. Let me just go there. So it also clicks in a 400 film. And then we have here 800, we have 1600, and that's end of story. And on low light, I typically go for an 800 film. I might want to show that in another video on this channel. And then what I will shoot for today is 400 film from Fuji. So 400 ISO is the setting I need here. Then we have here, let me just turn this around a little bit and let me get the camera straight. So then we have here exposure compensation. So if I push this here, I can rotate that wheel here, and you see here on the scale, you don't see it really. Let me try to get this up. So here I can go and now do my exposure compensation. You see that here I can change it. And that is also a very nice mechanical element here. And then I have here the exposure dial or shutter speed dial. And this is currently in auto exposure lock. And auto exposure lock means we are an aperture priority. I can basically point the camera somewhere, half press the shutter button, meter light, it will automatically adjust the shutter speed, and then I keep holding, half pressing the shutter button, and can recompose my image. And if I go to the simple aperture priority, I'm here, and then there is no recomposing possible because it will remeter the moment in time I recompose. So if you want to do metering and measuring light and then recomposing, you go into auto exposure lock. These two settings here, AEL and A, are also fixed on the shutter speed dial. So I cannot accidentally get out of that mode. I have to push that button here and then I can rotate it. Same for aperture priority here is fixed. And then if I want to go to manual exposure, I have here fastest 1/500 seconds, and white numbers indicate fractions. So 60 means 1/60 seconds, 30, 1/30 seconds, and so on. And then for 1/1 seconds, it's still in white. And then on amber here, we get 2-second exposure, 4-second exposure, and bulb mode. And in bulb mode, the lens stays open as long as I keep pressing down the shutter button. We have two ports here. One is a cable release port, and that here is a PC terminal port. And if I take this protection cap off, this thing here very likely gets lost very quickly. So you need to pay attention to that. It's also not super firm mounted on the camera body. But here, since this camera is not only in mint, but excellent condition, and actually, as I mentioned before in the video, looks to me like never used, this is all included here and no pieces or items are missing. The 80mm lens f4 here is absolutely beautiful. And as you can see again, no signs of use, almost brand new, but quite some years old. And it has a buttery smooth focus ring here with a distance scale. And here you actually have a depth of field indication. So let me quickly explain this. First of all, here is focus at infinity. And since this camera is kind of new, I hope that the rangefinder is still perfectly adjusted, because that's important. Otherwise, your images will not be sharp. And then the closest distance you can focus is 1 meter, which I think is good enough for an 80mm lens in the Mamiya 7 camera system. In order to see how 80mm in the Mamiya 7 system translate into a full-frame equivalent field of view, we have to look into the specifications, which we find in the manual of the Mamiya 7 II. And here we see that the actual image size is 56 × 69.5mm with 120 film. So all we have to do is calculate the diagonal of a full-frame sensor or of the true image size of 35mm film, which is 24mm × 36mm, squared, summed up, and then taking the square root, and then dividing this by the diagonal of the true image size of the Mamiya 7, which we just saw is 69.5mm in the horizontal direction and 56mm in the vertical direction, squaring it up, summing it up, taking the square root, then building the ratio, ends up at 0.4847. And that basically is the crop factor we have to apply. So an 80mm lens translates, give or take, into a 40mm full frame equivalent focal length and field of view. And an aperture of f4 widest open translates into a widest open aperture in a full frame depth of field of f2.0. So how's the depth of field indication working? Well, first of all, we have here an aperture ring with full stops for the clicks. Listen to the sound. Quite nice. And you can also shoot this between the clicks, no problem. The aperture is in continuous opening, so there is no problem if you want to shoot it in between, but it doesn't click in. So you might have some changes if you accidentally touch the aperture ring again. Let's say we shoot at an f16 and then we can here focus, and if we want to have focus at infinity, we go now to infinity, and then we see here the two 16 marks on the left and right hand side, and we see that on the far horizon we are at infinity, so the 16 mark is beyond the infinity sign here on the distance scale, and here you see we are ending up between 5 and 10 meter, so let's say 7 to 7.5 meter, and that means if we are in this setting, from a depth of field perspective, everything will be reasonably sharp between 7 meter and infinity. Let's make another example to make this clear. Let's go to an f8, and let's say we focus at 3 meter here, and then we go to the f8 marking, and we see on the left hand side this is somewhere at between 2 and 3 meters, so maybe at 2.7 meter, and on the right hand side this is somewhere between 3 and 5 meter, so maybe 4.2 meter or something like that, and then we know that within this range everything will be reasonably sharp. And again, most of the time if you do landscape, for instance, you go here to infinity, you see then f8 is on the right hand side of infinity, so will be sharp at the horizon. And if we look on the left hand side, it's around a bit more than 10 meter. So everything around 11 meter up to infinity will be reasonably sharp. That's the way these depth of field scales work on all of these manual lenses, including on Leica lenses, as you have seen on my channel many times. Now, currently we have this 80mm lens mounted. What else is available in terms of lenses for this Mamiya 7.2 camera body? And first of all, there is a 43mm f4.5 lens, a 50mm f4.5, a 65mm f4, and in addition to the 80mm, that's the last one, a 150mm f4.5 lens. And the data points we need to know about the 80mm lens are as follows. The angle of view is 58 degrees. We have a minimum aperture, we saw that, of f22, and we have the widest open aperture setting here of an f4, which is quite powerful. And we also have a magnification of 0.097, so close to 10%. So this is really not a lens you would use for close-ups or macro type shootings. If you decide to replace or remove the lens, that's not possible per se without closing the light shield curtain. And I can try this here, so push the button, try to remove the lens, is not working. And why it is not working is because, of course, the camera protects the film, and the film will be exposed to light if the dark slide or the light shield curtain is not closed. If you open here at the front side, the lens mount. And that's why you need to first of all close the light shield curtain. So we close it here. You've seen the mechanism before. And then we can push the button and can remove the lens. Easy like that. And we saw the lens before, kind of new. I'm very happy about that. Let's mount it back here to the camera body. And that's the way you can remove the lens. Without closing the curtain, you cannot remove it. Listen to that sound again, it's so nice. Boom. That's how it works. Now here's some advice and a little trick. If you follow my instructions and wanna close the light shield curtain, it might not work. So let's have a look here. I just created that situation. Now I cannot close the curtain. It's not working. And the reason is that the first step is always to cock the lens, because whenever you want to unmount the lens, it should be cocked, because when you mount it on the next camera body, the camera body will assume that the lens is cocked, and if cocking and not being cocked is not in sync, you run into a problem. So the first thing, now we cannot advance here, cannot close the curtain, is to actually advance here, and now we can close the curtain. See, now this is working. And that's a typical or common beginner mistake, that people get stuck somewhere in the process because they don't follow the strict order of things here in that process. First cock the lens, then close the light shield curtain, then remove the lens. Now it's ready to be removed, as you can see here. Let's go a few more steps. So here we can now switch on the camera. This goes from red to white, and now it's switched on, and the lens is cocked already, so we should be able to shoot. But that is not working because there is no film in the magazine. And the only way to simulate this, and you can read this also in the manual on page 14, is to go into multi-exposure mode. So I switch this here, and now I should be able to shoot, but it's still not working because there is another mechanism here which prevents the camera from shooting, and that's the curtain is still closed, which is also very smart, because if the curtain is closed, if you shoot it, no light will reach the film. So let's get the curtain now open. And now we can shoot, and listen now to this very silent, very non-intrusive shutter sound from the leaf shutter in the lens. Very silent, beautiful. Beautiful mechanics. I really like a lot that sound. Let's do this once more. Listen. Very discreet, isn't it? Now, since we know that, we can also test the self-timer. As I said, it's a 10-second self-timer, so let's cock the lens, advance the film, which is not yet in the magazine, and let's push that self-timer button here. Then we see a red light coming up for about 7 seconds, indicating that we now need to get in position for the selfie or for the group where we are taking the picture. And then for the last 3 seconds it flashes and then the shot is taken. Let's do this again. So you hear the sound again because it's so beautiful. Very nice. I really like this camera. These type of mechanical cameras with electronic components and then with medium format film, they are just fantastic. Beautiful, huh? That was the leaf shutter in the lens. I try now to film through the viewfinder or rangefinder to give you an idea how this looks like if you shoot that camera. And first of all, there is a bright frame here, so it's illuminated. There is a separate dedicated window at the front side of the camera body which catches the light to illuminate these frame lines. And then we have the outer frame, which is for the 6x7 format, and we have the inner frame indicated here, which is for 135 panoramic format. And parallax, by the way, is automatically corrected here. I'm currently in aperture priority and automatic exposure, and if I half press the shutter button at the ISO of 400, which I set up on the ISO wheel, the camera figures out that we have here 1/60 seconds as the correct shutter speed. So that works quite well. Of course, I can also do this manually if I want, but I think it gives you an indication. There are other LEDs in that viewfinder which give you, for instance, a warning when you are overexposing, a warning when you're underexposing, a warning if something is not right with the camera, and so on. There are different functions. For the time being, everything is okay, and aperture priority or automatic exposure indicates to me 1/60 seconds here. Now in the middle of the frame you see this little rectangle, and that's actually the same as what you have on Leica rangefinder cameras, and I've shown this many times on my channel, but want to quickly show it here again. I've placed the tripod in front of the background TV here and will now try to zoom in to show you how focus is working. We now focus on that rectangle in the center, and then the whole frame moves if I start to focus. So let me try to do this. And then we try to line the image up in a way that it perfectly matches. So this is too much. This is too much on the left-hand side. Let's go back. This is kind of it here. Now the image should be sharp, crisp and clean. And if in this setting, which I adjusted via range finding, I read off from the lens where we ended up, it's about 2 meters, which is, give or take, the distance I also see with my naked eyes to that tripod here. I'm now going to load the camera with film, and if you tried the camera out before without film, it's very important to get this multi-exposure switch back to normal, because otherwise it will not advance the film when you shoot and advance the lever. It will just cock the lens, and that will ruin everything, because all the 10 shots you want to make will end up in one frame only and will be completely useless. Before I load the film, let me close the light shield curtain, and for this let's cock the lens. So advance the lever here, and then let's do this here. Now it's closed, and now let's open this here. And I already put the take-up spool in the right place here, so all we have to do is to load the film here and then get the film advanced until we are ready to shoot. The film I'm going to load will be from Fuji, will be the Pro 400H. This is a 400 ISO film and is a color film, is suitable for daylight, as you can see here. And when the time is right, I might also come back and show you the images coming out from my most recent shooting with that camera. So let's get one of these rolls out here. Let's open them here in a way that we might be able to place it back in there. And then we have the film here. Let's open this up here. And let's make sure that we remove everything we don't want to have in the film later. Let's get this removed. All right, so let's get the film roll inside. Let me try to do this here very quickly. Okay, very important now is that you lock this again. And remember, you have to push this from the bottom of the camera body and it snaps in. That's it, now it's firm. Now let's pull this up. Very good, so let's advance this. Here we go. That already sits very nicely here. And now we have to advance it until we see that arrow coming, which is here. And we need to align that arrow exactly to that marking here. So let's go here. When we are there, this is about it. We can close now the film magazine. And now let's remove the camera from the tripod here. Let me just get this removed. So I have it handhold. And now we can advance this until we see here in that tiny little window the number 1 coming up for the first frame. So let's advance it. Let's advance it. Further advancing it. And here is number 1. And then it also locks. Now we can no longer move it. This is it. It's blocked now. I can no longer move it. And we are actually ready for the first shot. If you are a film shooter or want to become a film shooter, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. The Mamiya 7 II clearly is one of the best photographic instruments for shooting medium format film you can get today. It's only on pre-owned basis, but it is a fantastic camera. And if you're lucky like me and get a camera body and a lens which have no signs of use, you can even more enjoy the shooting. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.